Hello all of you inspired individuals. Today we are going to be taking a look at a couple of RPG horror stories. And if there are any stories out there that you want read, be sure to let me know. I'd be happy to give them a look. Anyway, on to the stories. This story is from Castian Blake. DM neutered my character, for real. I still play with this guy, and we rectified this situation, but I feel like this belongs here. A short time into my tabletop RPG career, I'm playing with a regular group every week. We have gone through a number of characters and campaigns because either work commitments would make it difficult for our DMs to prep, or they would get tired of the campaign and switch to a new game. We were a fairly easygoing group, so this was never an issue. Anyway, one of our DMs says he's super excited to run a new campaign about a bunch of mercenaries reclaiming an occupied city. This sounds amazing, so we all say we're in. He tells us he's going to pre-gen our characters and give them to us on session 1. Now, one of my favorite parts of TTRPGs is the creation of my characters, so I message him privately and ask if he'd be cool with me rolling my own character, since I always got to his house an hour before the others arrived, so we could chat video games and the like. He said no, he wanted us all to play the characters he had made. I was disappointed, but figured it was no biggie and I'd have fun with whatever I got. We get to session 1, and he hands me a dwarf barbarian with deep-seated anger issues. Okay, cool. I can work with this. So the game goes great the first couple of sessions, and we're having a good time. We get to session 3 or 4, and we come to the house of a wizard we've been looking for. We knock on the door, and get no response, and then begins the inevitable ordeal all parties face at some point. How do we open the unanswered, unknown door? So the rogue checks for traps, and tries to pick the lock and fails. The wizard attempts magic, but the door is warded. Finally, I decide to use the barbarian's lockpick and smash the door down with my axe. At last, we enter the house to find a very angry wizard. He's furious I broke the door down and decides to curse my character. He casts a spell and suddenly my dwarf has no beard. The horror! Which we all laugh at. But then the DM reveals that he also has no testicles. We all ask him out of character, why? And he says the wizard was super pissed. Then he asks me for my sheet and tells me that my constitution and strength scores are dropped by 4. This essentially makes my character useless. We end the session shortly after. I spoke to him afterwards and asked him why he had done all this, and his only explanation was that the wizard was really annoyed. I asked if it could be reversed, and he told me if the wizard decided to. The rest of the party told him this was unnecessary, but he stuck to his guns. I was young at the time. 15, I think. And so I did throw a bit of a fit and said, "If you don't at least remove the stat stuff, I'm going to get this guy killed." He told me I wouldn't be able to just do that. Cue the following sessions, I would break away from the party and try to find large groups of enemies to kill my neutered dwarf. Eventually, like many others before it, the campaign dwindled and was abandoned. I wish I had handled it better in hindsight, but I was young. Regardless, as I said at the beginning, we eventually managed to talk about this and rectify the issue. Never actually found out the reason why, but it's very much in the past. We've played many good games together since. TLDR. DM gives me pre-gen character I didn't want, and then makes him useless when I act in character, and gets upset when I try to get him killed. I feel in this story that the wizard actually retaliating because his door was broken, removing the beard and the balls from the dwarf in itself is kind of funny. The dwarf could go on an adventure to try to break the curse, but the fact that his stats were neutered too just makes it not desirable to play in the game. I'm glad that they both learned from the experience and have grown together as RPG players. This story is from Revo Sugarcane. That guy causes havoc in my D&D campaign, ends up blocking 6 people he's been friends with for 12 years, just because I asked him not to be a dick. So I have been DMing a homebrew D&D 5e game for coming up on 2 years. Before this game, I was very green, and this campaign has been a huge learning experience for me. I started playing with the 3 veteran TTRPG players, my girlfriend who had never played D&D, and eventually the problem player, who I will call Adam. After Adam Young, the Antichrist from Good Omens, because floop this dude. I actually posted about what to do with Adam somewhere in the middle of the timeline of this story, on the DM's D&D board, and this is the conclusion of the advice I sought. One of the players knew the game so well that I was pretty nervous DMing for them, and as such, I was often pretty tightly wound for the first few hours of every game. We brought Adam in around level 5 because they really needed an extra character, since 2 of the players worked at 7 AM nearly 6 days a week and would often crash early, leaving only 2 players. Adam was an old high school friend of 3 of the players. Adam said he had played D&D quite a lot before and loved roleplay and combat. Not true. Adam chose to play a lawful good halfling cleric woman who was on a spirit journey to find a patron. I was thinking it would be hard to justify them using most of their spells, but I figured it would make for a great roleplay and plot, so I went with it. Mistake 1. Come to find out, Adam was super awkward with roleplaying and would often stay quiet during roleplay moments and, when prompted, would just say what his character would do or say rather than actually roleplay. I figured he was just nervous and not used to it, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt and just fed him lines if he'd freeze. Mistake 2. Adam took to going off to pray alone whenever roleplaying would happen, which I took as a sign he wanted to start on the plot he clearly lobbed at me during character creation. So, I took it upon myself to find a god for Adam's character. I homebrewed a lawful good goddess, specifically in the domain of healing, as the only stated goal Adam's PC had was to become a healer. I didn't have much to work with here, but it worked for a while. Adam came across an artifact that allowed him to visit a pocket dimension called the Abyssal Shade. In this world, there are few gods and little magic. Essentially, a magical apocalypse happened about a century prior to the events of the game, leaving the land desolate of its usual patrons. The reason was to imprison these 10 highly destructive gods that have been using the immortal plane as their battleground in their endless wars with each other, decimating huge swaths of land and generally being a menace to literally all of civilization. These 10 gods were imprisoned in 10 pocket dimensions called shades, exact copies of the mortal realm, but entirely devoid of life. Adam, a lawful good cleric worshipping a lawful good goddess of healing, found an artifact that held immense power and gave them direct access to a demon's plane of existence. Good setup for a conflicted cleric, no? Apparently not. Adam found out when the artifact is used as a sword, and Adam crit with the sword, a substance known as void jelly would spray from it, causing whoever was hit with it to make a charisma 16 save, or be under the thrall of the demon of the abyss, through Adam's lawful good cleric. Whoa, bad, right? Don't spread the influence of a demon while serving a lawful good god, right? Apparently not. After this, Adam suspiciously rolled crits far too often, and would use the void jelly to essentially spray anyone in range, including party members. At one point, the cleric instructed some poor souls to cast 2 fireballs on their own friends, splashing 3 of the party members and nearly killing 1. I used some roleplay to insinuate that continuing to act this way would result in the loss of their patron and access to specific spells. So what did Adam do? Murder hobo his way through the first city the party has come to, a huge roleplay plot device I set up, and gets the party and an allied faction cast out of the city, making everyone involved the target of nearly every faction in power. Later that particular session, some downtime happens, somehow, and everyone is roleplaying. It's honestly one of the best roleplay moments in the game. Everyone in the party has realized that their actions carry immense weight here, as being this powerful of a group puts them up there with many of the factions in the game. Anything they do now will have consequences. However, during this session, I ask the cleric what they're doing while this conversation transpires. At this point, Adam knows that I only ask them that when I'm trying to set up a combo with their patron, and they just ransacked a whole city block, so their god is going to have some words. Adam throws an immediate fit demanding that we get on with the game, and that roleplaying is boring, and the only fun part about the game is the combat. They even snapped at one of the players, who still somehow had the confidence to actually reply in character to this outburst. It took the wind out of my DM sails real fast. As I mentioned before, I was super nervous about DMing for some of the players, and this undermined the confidence I had grown. We sorta called the session there. Everyone sorta grumbled about it after Adam left. I texted Adam after discussing it with the party, and asked him to either quit or understand that this game is roleplay heavy and involves consequences. I confronted him about metagaming. I haven't mentioned, he once looked up a monster I was using as a sort of puzzle fight and magically found its weakness. About making up roles, about out-of-character outburst, and murder hoboing, and he said, "I don't do ultimatums. Bye," and blocked everyone except my girlfriend on all social media, and made a weird, passive-aggressive, vague post about her specifically, and then blocked her after she confronted him about it. An epilogue. We since recovered, but then, one of the MVP players, a roommate of my girlfriend and I, blew up at the two of us and moved out without paying rent for the past month because we said we were going to have to move since the rental agency was raising the rent and we couldn't afford it anymore. They often would enter a pretty weird psychosis because they would go days and even weeks without sleeping. Huge red flag, I know, but they've been like this for the 12 years we've known them and nothing bad has ever happened. And we think this was the reason why they went nuts. Anyway, campaign is toast now, and it was like 2 to 3 sessions from the climax. Flooping shit. TLDR. That guy is nice enough at first, but we find that he hates role-playing, treats D&D like a board game, metagames, and cheats on rolls, uses his lawful good cleric to intentionally sabotage a carefully constructed roleplay session by murder hoboing through a city, and finds a weapon that furthers the will of a demon and uses it extensively, despite being a lawful good cleric, and having his god essentially tell him that he would lose patronage if he continued any of this behavior. During a roleplay heavy session where he was going to get called on his shit, he blew up at the whole table out of character and demanded we get on with the game. Once he was confronted after the session, he blew up at me and the party on social media and then blocked us all, despite being an old friend to most involved. If they're not going to respect you and say, you know, I'm not having fun at this game, or be able to talk and handle the conversation of being told, hey, maybe it's best you don't play this game, then it is okay that ties were cut there. It's sad, it hurts, but you don't want to pander to what he wants, because then he's just going to walk all over you. I really hope that OP and his girlfriend and them are able to actually pick up the rest of the game and finish it off. Even if that means that one of the players has to control 2 players, but it would be cool if they actually go ahead and finish the game. But that's at least what I think. I want to hear what you think down in the comments below. That will do it for today. And until next time, hope you feel inspired.